Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
Episode 15. Well, thank you, Michelle, for that wonderful introduction. You are the absolute best. Me? I'm Frank Sardella, and I'm so happy to be with you here again today in our podcast show. This show is free for you to not only give you marketing help in your practice, but to keep you on purpose, to keep you pumped up, and to keep you going. And that's my commitment in a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world. So welcome. Hello, you ambassadors of cool. You know who you are, regulars, newcomers. So glad you can join us. Who was here last time? If you haven't tuned into episode 14 yet, give it a listen or two, or 3 or 4 or 7. Okay? Shut Up, You Talk Too Much was the title. It'll be a real treat if you haven't heard it yet, especially the story about how he sold to the locomotive engineer. That was just absolutely fantastic. This guy has a million sales stories from the road. Thanks again, Ron, for being on the show. I have a copy here of his book, Listen More, Sell More. Brilliantly written. Great way to train your staff. Search it out on Facebook. If you go in the search field and you just type in Listen More, Sell More, he'll be the first one, actually the only one that comes up. As a matter of fact, just this morning, Ron was out here at Desiree Lotz's office, Instant CalMag C, if you remember her from episode 9. I've been camped out in this office, as you know, for a couple of weeks, and we all had a meeting here, and he was just telling us some riveting and hilarious anecdotes from the road as being a salesman. He's got a million of them. Thanks again, Ron, for all your wisdom, and we'd definitely like to have you back. Ron was also kind enough to do a Will Work for Patients cardboard sign photos. Remember the amateur photos, you guys. Speaking of which, where is yours? I'm still looking for yours. You know who you are, those of you who haven't sent it in. We want to get those up on Instagram. There's quite a growing collection. I want to thank everyone who's participated so far, including my guests on the show. You haven't jumped on that train yet? Well, you got to do it, because all I'm going to say is you're missing out on all the fun. So, you may not believe this. It may sound strange. It may be a foreign idea, but we have quite an episode planned for you today. Indeed we do. Okay? Now that you have the sales skill, or at least you've repaired the ones that you have or that you had, and if you learned anything, you know you have to prospect. And from what Ron Cool told us, he said prospects are literally everywhere, and that's true enough. Where do most people hang out these days, though? That's right, you guessed it, the World Wide Web. Now, that may seem very unreal to you at this moment. It may seem very international to you, the World Wide Web. But to people like my guest today, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the internet these days is way more local than you probably would have guessed or even known. And you're going to be very surprised what you're going to find out. Now, today's episode is entitled Invisible Chiropractors. I just love that title. Very pertinent, if funny and well thought of as usual title. Because on the internet, it's all about something called visibility. This is why we're talking about this today. And today's guest is going to take us on an educational and exploratory tour of the web and why you aren't visible on it. So now, what are we going to talk about today? My guest today is going to share the secrets of what's called SEO, Search Engine Optimization. A search engine is something like Google, Yahoo, Bing. Optimization would mean building certain words and phrases and things and content into your site to make you more searchable when people search those words. Okay, so he's going to talk about what he calls secrets of search engine optimization today. He's going to get into a lot about Google. This guy knows a lot about Google. Changes in 2012 that absolutely turned SEO upside down. I was just riveted when he was telling me about these things. How Google's 2013 changes then turned it inside out. And then there are different versions. They actually named their versions after animals. And we've got penguin and we've got hummingbird, and I don't know about you, but it makes me further confused, so I'm hoping Tony's going to clear all of that up. With these changes, it made us all wonder, is this the end of keywords? And Tony's going to hopefully answer that for us today. There's something called authorship markup that's absolutely brilliant that I learned from Tony a number of months ago, and he's going to talk about why it's so important. I'm a huge, huge proponent of this concept now. and definitely hoping you're going to get something out of that. And then there is a shift in planning keywords. There's a tool that used to be on Google that all of a sudden disappeared one day and got replaced by something else. Tony's going to be talking about that change and how it might affect you. We're not going to turn you into internet marketing gurus, but we're going to turn you into someone who knows how to run the people who run your internet marketing for you. And of course, if that wasn't enough, we're going to squeeze in a top 10 list made for you once again to keep precedent by our special guest. Okay, who is this masked man? Warning, I'm about to gush here, okay? You guys know how I get about these things. You'd expect nothing less from me. But I'm not only fascinated by what my guest has to say today, but he's also one of my favorite people, incidentally, one of the coolest people I know. I consider him a friend as well as a colleague, mostly because I feel he and I think alike, especially in the arts and marketing. We both have a purpose to help artists, incidentally. And you didn't think you're an artist? Well, think again. You guys are definitely artists in what you do. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Before social media ever even existed, he created something called Cybertown. It's an online membership community of people from 155 countries interacting in a 3D virtual reality. Isn't that fascinating? It's an off-world town set about 100 years in the future. 3D virtual reality. Cybertown grew to 1.3 million users, and it was receiving, get this, 1.5 billion hits a year, and was listed in the top 2,500 sites in the world in the Alexa traffic rankings. He's been a featured speaker on the dynamics of internet social community building, SEO, online membership sites, WordPress, niche affiliate marketing, and conferences and events across the world. He's also an accomplished record producer, you're going to love this about him, and recording engineer who has been lucky enough to work with many established artists. And if you just search this guy's name on the internet, you'll be astounded at some of the names that you see he's worked with. Once again, I'm gushing and going on, hopefully not embarrassing him, so I'm just going to jump right in. Please welcome to Will Work for Patients, my special guest today, Mr. Tony Rockliff. Tony, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Frank. Very good to be here.
Awesome. So happy you're here. Maybe you can give us a little background about yourself from your viewpoint. You know, before social media existed, how you sort of pioneered a lot of that stuff. So how did you stumble on some of this stuff?
Well, back in 1995, I was involved in creating what are called electronic press kits for the record business.
Yeah.
Which was just basically compressing things like videos and audio, which are huge. Mm-hmm. So we developed a lot of techniques for getting stuff to be very compressed, and you'll see why this is relevant in a moment. And then one day I got a phone call from someone who said they wanted me to do a video project for them, and I said, for what? And they said, oh, the internet. And I said, what's that? So I went over to his office and spent the next 2 hours looking at my first time I'd seen the internet. This was back in 95. And it was very bland back then. It was just mostly text and links.
Yes.
And occasionally, if you were lucky, you'd find a picture, but not very often.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I got kind of real excited by it. It seemed like this real kind of huge international canvas on which you could create anything. So myself and my partners started looking, spent the next 2 months surfing around, exploring it, and we got so much from it that we started looking at what can we put back into this great community that we've become a part of.
Wow. And
at first we thought we'd do a magazine, but as we did put the sections of the magazine together, we realized it would be much more interesting as a town, because the books section, the literature section could be a library, music section could be a concert hall, etc., etc.
Wow.
So we started creating this actual town, and then we thought, well, what if we made it in 3D virtual reality? So it's actual real town.
Wow.
And this is where the fact that we could compress huge amounts of data into small spaces became really useful, because nobody else could really do that to the degree that we did. And this was back on dial-up modems, which were really, really slow.
I was just going to say, I don't even want to admit to knowing what those are, but please continue.
Yeah, so you can imagine the challenges of trying to get hundreds of people all around the world interacting with each other with 3D bodies in 3D spaces in real time.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so anyway, to answer your question about what this has to do with SEO, there wasn't anything called SEO back then, but we had to figure out, well, how to get people to come to our website. And that's where we kind of started developing techniques and systems, which some of which became mainstream later in terms of how to get people to, how to get traffic to the site. Yeah.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and what a feat that was. I mean, I guess nowadays, things are so easy, but we take for granted what it took for us to get to where we are now with all this stuff.
Yeah, these days we definitely have it real easy compared to back then.
Absolutely. And so bringing us to present now, and we're going to talk mostly about SEO stuff today, but I also want to point out that we always think of businesses, I think, when we think of SEO, and artists are, among the ones who needed the most help in promoting, and the whole concept of the starving artist. So I'd just like to point out that you actually do this, and you teach artists how to promote themselves on the World Wide Web, yes? And you actually assist them in doing so, yeah?
Yeah, because half my life is spent in recording. Actually, my home is a recording studio, but half my life is spent doing music projects, and half is spent doing internet stuff, and they overlap a lot. I kept seeing this situation where artists would make a great album. Sometimes I'd be involved, sometimes not, but either way, they'd make this great album, and then it would just sit there, either not being promoted by record companies or not even getting with record companies, and they'd make 1,000 CDs, and they'd 10 of them would go to their mom and the dog and their friends, and they'd have 990 sitting in a garage a year later. And I figured there had to be a better way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And what a nice segue into today's topic, because my audience is chiropractors and their staffs, and even though they don't have something tangible per se, they have a lot of help to offer that's sort of, in sort of a metaphorical way, backs up in their garage kind of backlog, so to speak. So I want to get them some help in getting prospects, and that's going to lead us in nicely today. So thanks for that background. It was very, very fascinating. What we always do next, Tony, in the show is we always do the top 10 list. I want to thank you for contributing to this. It's sort of been a precedent now in the show when we have a guest that we not only get a top 10 list that's pertinent to the subject matter of the episode, but also have a lot of input, if not the whole thing, written by the guest. So I want to thank you for contributing the list today. Today's top 10 list is the top 10 SEO mistakes. So, number 10, not doing keyword research. Now, Tony, actually, I would like a little bit of background on this. Maybe you can just explain a little bit about a keyword and what the importance of it is for those who might not even know.
Okay. Well, a keyword is what people type into a search engine when looking for something. And even whether it's one word or 3 words or a phrase or whatever, it's still called a keyword for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And basically, when people type keywords in, they're looking for something specific. And if your site can be the site that shows up when they put in their search, all the better, because you'll get more people going to your website. That's the simplicity of it.
I see. So the simplicity would be like a potential patient goes in and he types in neck pain or something. This would be a keyword.
Yeah, lower back pain is a very typical one that I found in for chiropractors. In fact, one of the top ones for local chiropractors is lower back pain. And then you want your site to appear when he types in lower back pain. But if you don't do keyword research to find out what are the terms that people are actually searching for, you can miss the boat completely.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks. All right, number 9, chasing Google algorithms. You're going to have to explain this one to me too, Tony, because I'm not sure I'm following you on that.
All right. Well, an algorithm really just means a system. And Google has this big, convoluted, complex system of what it does when someone types in a keyword. Mm-hmm. And because Google keeps changing the rules, and in the last 2 years, unbelievably, 65 major changes in 1 year, a lot of people have latched on to how the system or algorithm was at a certain point in time, done a whole bunch of work, and then found all that work ruined when Google changed its mind and changed the system or the algorithm. So it's a big mistake to constantly chase what Google's doing.
Good advice.
You need to do stuff that survives all of that.
Wow, that's a mistake and a solution, right, all rolled into one. Thank you for that. Number 8, not creating content that utilizes the keywords or utilizes them properly. This one sort of makes sense to me now, so anything you want to comment on?
Yeah, I just go to so many websites, and all they are is a brochure describing the chiropractic services.
Yeah.
And very little in terms of useful, valuable content to a new prospective patient, where he reads up on, the relationship between nutrition and chiropractic. Whatever the different areas are that the chiropractor has a lot of knowledge in, that he can impart that knowledge in a valuable, helpful way to someone coming to his website for the first time. That's the stuff of which Google keyword success is just totally, it's the backbone of it.
Totally understood. It's a really good one. Thanks for that. Okay, number 7, not checking competition amounts and not checking the strength of the competition. Now, I know you explained this to me a while ago. I think I even need a little refresher on it. The word strength, I think, is key here, yes? Sure.
It's basically that when you're doing research to find out what people are searching for, a lot of people make the mistake of going, ooh, there are 20,000 people a month searching for lower back pain. I've definitely got to chase that. But if you've got 20 million sites targeting that keyword in their sites, your chances of being on page 1 when people search for that term are very slim. So you've got to check and see how much competition there is, and there are certain guidelines of how much or how little competition you can successfully compete against. And then, more important than that, is the strength or weakness of the competition, because you could have 1 million sites competing against you, but 95% of them competing really badly.
So in other words, if your competition is making a lot of, let's say, SEO mistakes, or they're not doing a lot of SEO or what have you, then you would have a better chance. Right.
Exactly. And there are tools that will help you figure these things out.
Okay, that's simple enough. Thanks for that explanation. Number 6, not claiming your Google authorship. This one's my favorite because I went and did that. Maybe you can sort of comment on this now.
Well, simply, you've probably noticed in the keyword search results, when you do a search, every now and again you'll see somebody's picture there.
Absolutely.
And it really stands out. And those are the ones that get clicked on more because there's a picture. And what it is the person has just basically told Google in a certain way that they are an accredited author. An accredited author only needs to have written, one post on the internet if he sets it up right. And when you are a recognized author by Google, they reward you with better rankings in the search engines. Plus, there'll be a link there to all of your work across the web.
Wow, great. Thanks for that. Number 5, keyword stuffing. I like that. It sounds like Thanksgiving. And other attempts to game the system. I've seen this done before, but why don't you tell us your viewpoint on it?
Well, you've probably gone to the web, started reading an article and going, my God, this makes so little sense grammatically, or it's really hard to read, and they keep saying the same words over and over again. And that's basically people who in the past found, in the early days of SEO, that the more times the keyword was in the content, the more Google's robots would go, aha, this is valuable content. But then Google, of course, caught on to this and started to penalize sites that did that.
Right. And from what I understand, they want to please the users, the user experience, the person who's searching to find very valuable content, not crud.
Well, Luke, just as there's a force, there's also a dark side.
Yeah.
And on the force side, yes, absolutely. They want the search experience to be the best possible for the user. On the dark side, they want people to pay for pay-per-click ads because that's their biggest source of revenue.
I see.
So the more they can do to make it hard for people to get free keywords, in particular in the last couple of years, they've been making it harder and harder and harder
I see.
to compete using that.
I see where this is going. Okay. Number 4, using the keywords meta tag, you're going to have to explain that word, and other over-optimizing, in quotes, techniques. So what is a meta tag?
Okay, when you go to any website, and if you do a right-click on the website and choose the option called View Source, you'll see the code behind that page. And there's a section where it says meta equals keywords. And people would stick in a whole bunch of keywords there and think they were doing SEO or think that they were, pleasing Google. But Google stopped paying any attention to that section of the code in the late 90s and also started penalizing people who were stuffing it with lots and lots of keywords. And one of the ways where Google kind of turned everything inside out and upside down last year was they had been recommending lots of techniques for optimizing your site for the Google search engines. And then last year they decided that 90% of those were now going to be classified as over-optimizing, and you'd be penalized for them.
Wow.
So needless to say, that caused quite a consternation in the world of SEO.
I bet. All right. Yeah. Moving on. Number 3, going after short-tail keywords, not long-tail keywords. Tell us about that.
Well, that just refers to, let's say, for instance, credit cards. It's considered a short-tail keyword because there are millions and millions of searches for credit cards, but there's also millions, perhaps billions, of competing sites. But if you go after something more specific, what they call the long tail, like credit cards with a low percentage APR for one-legged farmers in Iowa, It's much, much more specific.
I see.
And also much further along in the sales cycle as it happens. People are much closer to buying when they're being that specific. Now, there's a lot less searches for those kind of terms, but there's way less competition, meaning you can be on page 1 of Google far more easily for those kind of terms. And you get a whole bunch of those, and they'll add up to a lot of traffic.
There's a gem right there in advice. An example of that also would be when I go to Google, sometimes I just type in, how do I fix, a cop in a rowboat or something. So in other words, how to and that thing.
Yeah, that's long tail. Whereas
really good one.
If you just put in rowboat, that's short tail.
Yeah, got it. All right. Number 2, buying backlinks or making them 100% keywords. Tell me about this, because this sounds like a mistake I might have made.
One of the things, remember you mentioned before various animals, penguin and hummingbird, and there was another one called panda.
Okay.
And one of the major things that was targeted in one of those updates was the fact that one of the ways that Google gave credence to a site and therefore raised it in the rankings was by the number of other sites linking to it, which are called backlinks. So people decided, okay, well, let's just buy a whole bunch of backlinks and let's fake it and let's find all sorts of fake ways to get thousands of backlinks. So they were up at the top of the rankings with, say, 5,000 backlinks that had been obtained nefariously. The update came out, and 12% of the web vanished overnight in the rankings.
Wow.
And people lost their businesses, lost their livelihoods, and a lot of major change. And also, the ones who had done some of this buying of backlinks, the only way they could fix it was to go back to the original people who had linked to them, and there could be 5,000 of them, and ask them to remove them. And most people wouldn't. So it was a horrible mess.
I bet.
So the advice is don't get involved into any kind of fake backlinking site.
What lesson learned, for sure. Okay, well, that brings us to the top of the list. The number 1 SEO mistake. Tony, I think I'm going to let you read this one since you prepared the list.
Well, not realizing the power of citations for local SEO or social media for overall SEO. Citations doesn't mean traffic tickets. It means being listed in local directories. A lot of businesses realize that it's probably a good idea to get listed in the local directories or the local chiropractic directories. But many people don't realize that it's not just important, it's utterly vital. As an example, recently, locally, there's an area called Carrollwood, and I did a search for tax account in Carrollwood, and 9 out of the top 10 were directory listings. It's that powerful in the way that Google rewards them. And so getting yourself in the top 20 of the most important local directory sites and getting good reviews is utterly vital for a chiropractor who's going after a local public if he wants to appear on page 1 of Google. And there's actually just a quick tip. A quick way to find out how you stand in terms of citations to your site is to go to moz.com/local, moz.com/local. You put in the name of your business and your area code, and you'll get a whole screen describing the pluses and minuses of where you stand in terms of your citations. You can also fix them there as well.
Righteous. I definitely want to forward that. You know what we'll do is, Tony, I think I'm going to have you get me that link, and I'm going to put it up on social media. So, folks, if you want to go ahead and check that out, don't worry about writing it down. We'll put it on either the website or on all of our social pages for you. All right, Tony. Well, I definitely want to move on from the list here because I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, although the list was absolutely fascinating. So thanks for the tips and advice in between there. It was very not only educational, but I think also sort of a learning experience, which is what we intend. So that's great. Let's talk about changes.
Let's see. Panda probably was the first one that really kind of caught people off guard. It's funny, I often get asked, why is it called Panda? And do you happen to know why it's called Panda?
No, actually I don't. I don't even understand the whole animal thing at all. So maybe you can clear this up for us.
Well, it's actually called Panda because the guy who developed the algorithm or system was called Navneet Panda. That was his name.
Get out of here. So it had nothing to do with the motif of picking a random animal or anything?
No. But in order to have this make any sense, I've got to give a kind of brief overview, a very, very brief kind of history of Google search.
Okay.
And because how it started, people would put a couple of words into the search engine. Google would search its index of websites looking for articles containing those words. At first, the more times those words appeared in the articles, those sites could rank in the search engine, what's now called keyword stuffing. And then what happened was sites sprung up that enabled numerous people to publish lots of these articles. They were known as article hubs, article directories, content farms, etc. Places like e15 Articles, Hubbase, and many, many others. And they were typically home to thousands and thousands of low-quality user-generated pages. And because numerous sites used the same articles, the web became a mass of duplicate, poor content. I'm sure you've run into it.
Yeah, I have.
And these articles were usually stuffed full of keywords. This often led to pretty horribly unreadable and often confusing content. And then in February of 2011 came Panda. And Panda was voracious. And as I mentioned before, it wiped out the rankings of 12% of the web overnight. And numerous updates since then have affected many more sites. So in terms of those article hubs and directories like Hub Pages and Swidoo and eHow, Article Space, howtodothingscom, if you look at their graphs over the last 2 years, it's just a straight downward plunge.
No kidding.
Yeah, and even sites like business.com dropped 93%.
Wow.
I mean, major drops. e15 Articles, which was one of the major, and Hub Pages, another one, they were like 90% drop, 87% drop. And then, just when people were starting to recover, in April of 2012, out came Penguin. And Penguin was like Panda, but it was for spammy, unnatural keyword stuff backlinks that I mentioned before. So suddenly those sites that had spent years painstakingly building or buying backlinks found themselves being heavily penalized. And as I mentioned, even having to contact sites that had linked to them, which was horrendous.
All I can think of is it's no wonder why guys like you exist, because those of us laymen, particularly my listeners, I have to tell you, they barely have time to market, much less understand what goes on. I just can't believe some of the complexities, and not to mention, as if it wasn't complex enough, the changes that come, the rapid changes, and you just gain an understanding of it, and then they sort of change the game on you a little bit. So I can only imagine what that's like from your position.
Yeah, just as an example, Google kind of appeared 13 or 14 years ago, and in the first 10 to 11 years, there were maybe 3 major changes. And in the last year alone, there were dozens, such an acceleration of changes. And then in August and September of this year, they introduced Hummingbird, and Hummingbird affects 90% of all searches. Now, Hummingbird is actually a very good thing, but it completely changes how Google responds to keyword searches. And as an example, basically what it does is it tries to match the meaning or intent behind the search rather than just the individual words or keyword phrases. So let's say as an example, in the past, if you put in a search like dog groomers near my house, Google would analyze each word or phrase individually and provide results based on that. So you might get a Wikipedia article about dog groomers, some map results based on your current location, home improvement websites, pages titled My House, a whole mixed bunch of stuff.
Wow.
But now Google really tries to figure out, well, what does the guy mean? And so now you get a much more, for the most part, targeted result. But it means that when doing keyword research, it's all the more important to look at it from the viewpoint of questions. What are the main questions that your people looking for your product or service might ask in a search, like how to get rid of my back pain, for instance?
I see.
So you're looking for the longer tail phrases, the long tail keywords, and like I say, questions rather than just simple keywords.
That absolutely does make sense. Very useful.
And just a little bit more on Hummingbird is the fact that, as an example, Google will now recognize when someone puts in plus-size dresses and somebody else puts in dresses for larger women, Google will show the same site.
Oh.
Because they recognize that they're looking for the same thing.
So I guess there is a lot to the positive side. You have the dark side, but you have still the good side. I guess as a user of Google, we're probably finding more relevant stuff than we ever have. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. What about keywords? You had posed the question at one point, is this the end of keywords? And I sort of want to know where you were going with that.
Well, the answer is yes and no. It's the end of being able to just find the searches things people were searching from, put them in strategic places on your website, and have your site show up in the search engine results. It's now much more, like I say, finding questions, phrases, concepts, but more importantly, using them in a lot of valuable content around the site. Because the big mistake is, and the big thing that Google will unreward you for, is a site that's just like a brochure. And actually, I just want to make, this is kind of disrelated, but it's just a major point. So often also I'll go to a site, a chiropractor site, any business site, where the first thing that the site owner is saying is a lot of stuff from their viewpoint about what they do and how great they are and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10, when a new person comes to a site, they pay much, much more attention to what others say about you than what you say about you. So one of the first places they want to see, the first things they want to see is your testimonials. What are other people saying about you? And having those right up front is ever more important.
Well, I also want to add a little caveat there, just so you know. I mean, this is a particular niche market. Check with your local board and, or your attorney or someone like Kathy Mills-Chang for sure, just to make sure in your area, or sometimes you have to modify what's said in this, the testimonial. Some areas you can't, but in the areas you can, this is really good. This is really good information for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, good. If you don't mind, Tony, I want to move on a little bit because I sort of wanted to make sure we squeezed in a little bit more about authorship markup and the value of it, because what I want them to do is actually take something away, today that they can use. And I know this is something that's sort of easy to have done. Once done, it's something that sort of gives you a boost of how you're viewed by people as in terms of being an expert on something, and that's the authorship markup. I'm wondering if you can maybe comment a little more and maybe tell us how we could sort of utilize this to our advantage.
Okay. Another of the benefits of authorship markup is that it locks that content into you as the owner of that content. Mm-hmm. So if somebody tries to steal your content or use it elsewhere on the web, Google can penalize them for duplicate content and also rank you higher because it recognizes you as the source of the information. But if you go to the top 10 page and there's only one there that has a picture and it's you, then it's been shown that people are much more likely to click on it.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, I myself find myself, clicking on the one with the picture, and I may not even know the guy. I can see how that works. Okay, and then, I'm looking for other things that we can take from this, but I know you were talking about this whole shift from keyword planner and what this means to the person doing SEO for their website.
All right. There was a free tool called the Google Keyword Tool, where you could just go free on the web and find out what are the keywords that people are searching for in your area. You could put in chiropractic and see what came up and what questions people were asking and what phrases people were using in that area. And then you could use that in your articles and your blog posts and your YouTube videos, your online press releases, etc. And it gave a lot of great information. It showed, how many phrases those keywords were showing up in, which was very important to know. But then they changed it completely to you had to have a Google AdWords account to access it, and it was now called Google Keyword Planner. And they no longer told you the number of searches of the phrases. So they omitted a great core of key information that was needed. And then some of your readers may be familiar with Google Analytics, which is a very key tool that basically tells you, what people are doing when they come to your site. How many people are coming, what are they doing, where are they going, how long are they staying, and particularly what keywords did they put into a search engine to find your site. And that's crucial information because you can really capitalize on that when you know what that is, and you can also check the results of your own SEO campaigns. But over the last year, Google started out with like 20%, it put into a section called Not Provided, where they just said there's a whole bunch of keywords in this area, but we're not telling you what they are. And over the last year, it's grown and grown and grown. Last month, I started seeing 80% not provided, and this month I've even seen sites with 100% not provided. So they're really definitely making it harder and harder for people to find the right keywords.
I see. What would you say probably is the best thing to take away from this in terms of, let's look at our audience, they're chiropractors, they want to grow their practice. So with all this in mind, what would you say that would be a word of advice in terms of how they're going to look at this and approach it?
Actually, I can give you a number of things, including a couple of things I haven't mentioned so far.
Okay.
One is, since usually chiropractors, for the most part, are looking for a local public, right?
Yes.
So the information on getting yourself in the right directories and getting good reviews, in other words, getting citations, that's the cornerstone, the backbone of getting yourself on page one locally. It's like if you don't do that, you've got a hard job. The other thing is, as I say, putting content, actually valuable content, on your website, so that a new user coming to the site goes, oh, this is great, this guy's giving me useful, valuable, free content, their affinity for you is going to rise. They're going to be more. But the other thing is that a couple of things that are still working really, really well, despite all the Google changes, is YouTube videos.
Yes.
How-to videos, informational videos, placed on YouTube and linking back to your site. And if you also put a link to them on your Google Plus page, this is amazingly powerful. I've got 2 clients who have got their videos on page 1 of Google for highly, highly competitive terms, just because they put a link on their Google Plus page, their Google Plus business page, to their video on YouTube. Now, of course, Google owns YouTube, so it's very, very peculiar that Google really likes YouTube and it really likes Google Plus, both of which it owns, of course.
Very suspicious, yes.
Yeah, but it really makes a major difference. The other thing that works really, really well is, if you've got your keywords, is to put them in what's called a keyword optimized press release and release that around the web.
Yes.
That is incredibly powerful for getting a lot of traffic to a site.
Outstanding. I like that piece of advice. That's a good one. That's definitely a takeaway point. Let me ask you a question. Am I to take away from this that in going out and doing SEO, it's like your life could change in a moment?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'd love to be able to say it's something anyone can do.
Yeah.
But honestly, it took me 18 years to get, and I'm still learning, because Google's still changing.
Astounding. I don't even know how you do it. I would have all my hair pulled out by now, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, good. That was outstanding information. And Tony, I want to thank you, first of all, for making it simple enough. I was actually not dreading this topic, but, I have my share of confusion on it as well. And I consider myself pretty in the know about a lot of stuff. But on this one, I'm a little bit shaky, and I know actually a lot of the doctors we work with are even less in the know on this kind of stuff. So I want to thank you sort of for simplifying a lot of things, and it's nice to know there's an SEO person who's not going to be so technical and who's going to sort of spoon feed this to us. So thanks for that. So let me do a little recap here. All the changes set aside, I guess. I mean, the changes are the changes, what happened, and we are where we are. So all those things aside, let's say on the point of keywords, what should be our takeaway point from this episode?
For me, it all starts with keyword research. I don't start any campaign without having done keyword research, because that informs the rest of the campaign. So if there's any takeaway, it's, for God's sake, get some keyword research done, because you can use that not only on your website, in your blog posts, your articles, your social media, your videos, your press releases. I mean, everything is governed by having the right keywords.
Absolutely. And to cap that off, every great marketing campaign in history started with a survey, and this is sort of no different. This is the internet version of survey, isn't it?
Yeah, this is 21st century surveying.
Absolutely. Very well put. And then authorship markup. The benefit of this is to position them as an expert, right? We want somebody to, let's say they don't necessarily come up number 1, they come up number 5 on the page. They're probably more likely to be clicked on with a photo than the guy at number 1 without the photo. Is this a good summation, or do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, and they get more credibility.
More credibility. Yeah, I like that. We're into the word expert here, so we like that. We're trying to position them as experts. That's brilliant. And planning keywords obviously goes along with the research and what have you. Are there any other overall recap points that you'd like to sort of say here to sort of put period to this subject for the listeners?
Not really. I think we covered it pretty thoroughly.
I think we did too. It actually is pretty simplistic. I'm looking at this long list of things we had to talk about, but when it comes down to it, it really is very, very simple. As long as you're in capable hands of someone like yourself, for sure. Okay, well, good. So I think we'll end off on that point. So that brings us to the last word. Who gets the last word? I do. After all, it's my show. So what should we take away from today's podcast? If anything, I sincerely hope you take to heart one thing, okay? And that's visibility. Doesn't it make sense that before someone can see you, you have to make yourself visible? And especially, come on, guys, in this profession here, chiropractic, how invisible have you been for how long? And now, to accentuate that, we have the internet, and you become even less visible. It's no longer about the sign you put outside your office. It's about people being able to find you in the most common place where they hang out. But don't be afraid of it, because the internet is maybe worldwide, but it's also very local. And when you have someone like Tony Rockliff in your corner doing something like this, doing the thing that he does, he will get you localized on it, and people like that can actually get you the traffic that you're looking for. Okay, so it's not about that roadway sign anymore. It's really about the information superhighway, so you know that's where they're looking for you. Okay, so if you take anything away from this, again, visibility is the word. Hey, wouldn't it be amazing if we could look back on this moment and say this is where it all changed? Yes, I even mean SEO and internet marketing. I'm not kidding you. While SEO and internet aren't going to be the entirety of your practice marketing, it is another way, just as Ron Kuhl told us in the last episode, of prospecting. Prospects are everywhere. But wouldn't this be amazing if we just look back on this moment and we said this is where it all changed? I would love to have that moment with you. One new patient a day is still our most popular show by far. But pick any of these episodes and let's make that the moment that it all changed. We got quite a collection growing here, and I want to continue to get you guys to grow your practices. Okay, Tony, here's where we actually tell everybody to get in contact with you. They've already gotten my emphatic endorsement of you in my preview of who you are, but let's give them ways to get in touch with you. So email, website.
Okay, my email is trockliff@gmail.com. So it's trockliff@gmail.com.
Rockliff, got it, at Gmail.
My websites are indietrack.com, which is INDIETRAK.com, and also bestinternetmarketingsecrets.org.
Got it. bestinternetmarketingsecrets.org and indietrack, INDIETRAK.com are the two websites. Yes, very good. And then, Tony, we always put our guests on the show on the spot to do something for our listeners. Is there anything that you want to do maybe to help them out or throw them a bone on something?
I could teach their ferrets to scuba dive.
That would be fantastic. I think that'd be very valuable. In fact, how did you know most of our audience own ferrets?
Well, these days it's pretty common, but but no, for the guys who don't own ferrets, I could do a free 1-hour consultation.
Fantastic. That'll be for the ones that own hummingbirds, pandas, and penguins, yeah?
Yeah, and what I can do is take a look at your existing situation with regard to your online, what we call your digital footprint, and what you can do about it.
Okay, very good. That's really reasonable and fair, so thank you for that. So you heard it here first. You can contact Tony. Also, if you didn't retain that and you want to get in touch with me through the show, frank.screenings@live.com, I will make sure all of the traffic gets forwarded to Tony that rightfully belongs to him. Plus, we're going to be chirping about him and tweeting about him all over the place. You know we blitz the social media with all of our guest stuff on the episode. So, Tony, thanks for that offer. Next episode, again, it's not decided which it's going to be. As I told you before, we've got about 10 guests lined up, and the list just keeps growing and growing. I have another episode we're doing a few days from now. We've got things on branding and a lot of surprise things for you. You know I got surprises up my sleeve for you. I always have. So we've got some special treats for you. I will work for patients. Incidentally, so will Tony Rockliff. So will you? Come on, guys, let's do this, huh? Tony, I just can't thank you enough for being here. You were brilliant as usual, so thanks so much for taking the time to not only be here, but to care about enlightening our listeners. As you know, this is a grassroots effort we're doing to expand the profession here, and I really want to thank you for your contribution to that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's always a delight to talk with you, Frank.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thanks again. Last plug, free resources, guys. YouTube, free YouTube videos for your website, for your social media. Go to willworkforpatients.com, scroll down to the bottom. You will see a growing list of resources there. All the links to everyone who's ever been on the show, and yes, we will be adding Tony Rockliff's links there as well. You'll be able to do that, but do use those YouTube videos on the free site. Our blog, chiropracticmarketingadvice.com. We're going to be putting more content related to the show now. We're going to actually have a tab for Will Work for Patients on there. I want you to check that out as well. Please listen, subscribe, download, and please refer your homies, okay? We want more chiropractors listening to the show. That's the whole point. I recommend BeyondPod. I'm an Android user right now, and I happen to love that app, love it, so I recommend that, highly endorse it. On your iPhone, you have the podcast app you can get right out of the App Store if it's not installed. It's a great app. I use it on iPad. And, of course, we have the RSS feed you can find right off of our website. Remember, this is a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world like we all want. So let's make every episode count, huh? I know I can count on you. So, my friends, we've come to the end of an intriguing episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, the skilled and very talented Tony Rockliff, our announcer Michelle, and the rest of the Screening Experts crew, I thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon for yet another episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.